So, welcome back to the Comics Report. And this week we've got a very special guest, Jordan Thomas. Hi there. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Angelo. Nice to
My
be
pleasure.
here.
Nice to meet you too. Absolutely my pleasure. So, I honestly, I've been reading some of your back work because I picked you up on Mugshots and instantly fell in love with it. And then Skin Police knocked me for six. So I went diving. So I picked up all your other stuff and I've given it a through. But what I wanted to find out with creators, usually interviews, they go straight to talking about the books. But I actually want to find out a bit more about you. So, who or how were you introduced to comics? I mean, I know you're British like me. So was it 2000 AD or was it something else?
No, so the way that I kind of got into comics was I'm from a little town near to Brighton, down on the south coast of England. And I used to go every weekend with my parents over to Brighton. And Brighton always has a lot of kind of slightly more out there shops and different stuff. And they had some shops that did trading cards. So they'd sell like collections of, they could be Marvel cards, DC, or it could be Star Wars. Or I remember the first set that I ever got was a Terminator 2 set when I was like four. So it's a bit of a weird thing to get as a
Good start, though.
4-year-old. But yeah, my parents were never ones for stopping me like watching anything. So I was big into the Schwarzenegger films by the time I could speak. And so yeah, I kind of got to know the characters through collecting all the trading cards to start with. So I could have told you who like everyone was in all the Marvel and DC comics, but I wasn't actually reading the comics until probably more like 11, 12 years old, when I had some friends who were into comics and started to lend me stuff to check out. So yeah, I guess like the cartoons, like the X-Men cartoon, the Batman animated series, and trading cards and action figures were kind of my first way into the comics world.
Yeah, I guess so. Because my age group was a little bit older, so we had 2000 AD, and like we didn't have access to all these cartoons or things, or even American comics. But so you got into American comics quite early then. So you kind of skipped that whole, warlord battle and all that kind of thing.
I mean, I definitely knew who some of the 2000 AD characters were from the same kind of reason. I've got like I wasn't born when it came out, but I've got like the 2000 AD annual 1986 or something that I've always had. So I'd when I was going to the shops in Brighton to get like the trading cards, I would sometimes get the odd random collection. I don't know if it was the person who ran the shop being to my dad like, oh, he likes these, maybe you should check this. But I've got a really random collection, and I've got most of them still, but of like, I had the Bernie Wrightson drawn Hulk versus Thing comic for some reason. I had that. I had the 2000 AD 1986 annual. I had like a Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six. So I had a little bit of random bits and pieces, but I think it was all just what this kind of
So superheroes in general, right? I guess.
Yeah. Superheroes were definitely the entry.
It's very interesting. When did you realize that comics was something you wanted to get into, maybe start writing?
So at university, I did script writing for film and TV at Bournemouth University. And within that, like I got into just kind of writing, like telling stories through like script writing. And I'd always really enjoyed writing. And I've always been a super like comics, film, TV shows, books, like a real kind of glutton for taking in as many stories as I could. And I did a little bit of comic book writing whilst I was at uni, because I had a few friends who were really good artists, and we kind of dabbled with a few little things. And then but I never really thought about it as something that you could really do. I don't know. Although I knew who different creators were, like I knew who the people writing all the comics I was reading and the artists were, like by name. I think it just felt like a very American thing because I hadn't generally gotten into 2000 AD. So I wasn't super aware of what was going on there beyond the kind of major characters. It felt very like something you needed to be in America to even have a chance to do. So although I did a little bit of comic book writing when I was kind of 20, 21, it was only really when I had some friends get into using Kickstarter to make comic books that I kind of saw, they kind of got me to help edit a few things. And then I got asked by them to write a few shorts for some anthologies. And that was when I kind of thought, oh, like this is an actual way to make something, because the film and TV industry is horrible. And especially in England, where there's like, there's maybe David Lee or or Mike Lee or someone is doing a film, and apart from that, there isn't kind of that much else going on. So being able to like do something like Kickstarter, where I just needed to find an artist to work with, and we could tell a story and make it, and it could exist, was really exciting. So that was kind of my first step into really making them in a serious way, was using Kickstarter.
Yeah, because it gives you that freedom, doesn't it, to just do what you want. Before it's prohibitive. Before, especially when I was trying to break into comics, it was you either get signed by the big guys or you don't make comics. And self-publishing wasn't really the huge industry that it is now. That's really interesting. So, so how did you break into the industry then? Do you start with these anthologies, and you got spotted? Something happened. You decided you wanted to do more.
So it was really, so the first thing that I did kind of properly, apart from the odd short for an anthology, was Frank at Home on the Farm, which was a book I did on Kickstarter as like 4 issues with a really great British artist called Clark Bint. So we did that on Kickstarter, and literally like the day after I sent out the digital files for the final issue, I got a email in my Kickstarter account from Scout Comics, who were quite a newish publisher in America.
Yeah.
They kind of specialized it, like they're not a comic book publisher that pays advances and kind of get stuff made off their own backs. They tend to pick up stuff that already exists maybe in the small press world, or people are already working on, and then kind of bring them into their publisher to get them into the wider market. So they literally emailed me the day after the final issue of Frank was released and said, "Oh, we'd love to publish this." So that kind of first book that I ever did ended up being published like in the direct market.
Lucky break.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a point where I think that Scout were really scouting. I guess maybe that's how they came up with their name.
I remember them putting out their sort of feelers for people to sort of send them their work, actually. So that was quite lucky. Listen, I did read Frank at Home on the Farm, and I've got to ask, was that inspired or written when you got home from a heavy night out on the town? Because I was reading it, I was thinking it was so dark. It was very Orwellian. It was like Animal Farm, but with a twist. I mean, I really, really enjoyed it, actually. But so how did that come about in your head? Because I know how ideas come to me, but I'm always interested in how they come to other people. Did you see something, or you just thought, you know what, I need to redo Animal Farm, but messed up for a modern generation?
It's quite a random one, actually. So I actually wrote that originally as a film script for my final project on my BA degree at Bournemouth. And I'd come up with the idea for it watching, do you know the film, I think it's Before Sunrise, with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy? They're two like 20-somethings, and they meet randomly when they're traveling around Europe. And it's kind of almost in real time, and they have like a romantic day together. Which right now, obviously, having read it, you're thinking there's nothing like this at all in Frank. It's pretty bleak. There's no romance in Frank at all.
No,
there's like
not
a
at
couple
all.
of women who mainly end up dead as soon as they come near him. But in that film, they bump into a guy on a bridge who's like Belgian or something, and he says like, "Oh, I'm putting on a play tonight with my friends. Would you come see it? In it, I play a cow, but I sit at the table and I smoke a cigar and I read a newspaper, like not like a normal cow." And somehow, just from that little thing, I wrote down on 2 sides of A4, like freehand, basically the whole story of Frank at Home on the Farm. That was really the main kind of structure of the story as it finally ended up. So yeah, it was quite late. I used to, at uni, I was very much go to sleep at like 5 a.m, wake up at 1 p.m. kind of guy. So it's probably about 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was watching this film by myself and just had this random idea.
I thought it was something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think all creatives tend to be night owls. I myself am exactly the same. So it makes total sense to me. I love how something so tiny and innocuous can become something so huge. So I'm always very interested. But what was that little spark? Where did it come from? So, okay, so that was the beginning. I'm going to get a bit more into the other books, but again, so I read in another interview that you live in Spain. So what was the driving force to move you out of the UK into Spain?
So after university, I lived in London for like 5 years, and I was a copywriter for a digital learning company. So very corporate kind of business skills training, like how to give a presentation or comms videos for big corporations. And I had a buddy who was living in Spain that I'd visited a couple of times, and he seemed to have such an amazing life over in Spain. Like the weather was nicer, it was way cheaper, everyone was very relaxed and chilled out. And so I quit my job in London and decided to go stay with him for a bit, with the original plan just being to see what happens and just to kind of work on my own writing for a while. Because although I had a lot of fun in London, between like working your 9 till 6 job and then you go to the gym, maybe you meet some friends, you go to the cinema, I wasn't really doing much of my own writing anymore. I was just kind of doing the job stuff. So yeah, I just kind of moved to Spain pretty randomly, really, just to kind of give myself a bit of a reset. And I didn't know how long I'd stay, but that was like 9 years ago now.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I really fell in love with the place, and enough things went right that I was able to kind of find different work. Like I did some English teaching over here. I did some freelance copywriting stuff, and that also gave me the time to work on the comics. Like, so I wasn't having to work such long hours.
Yeah.
It was cheaper, so I had a bit more spare income. So I was able to pay Clark to draw Frank in advance without having to like. I didn't have to do the thing that people have to do on Kickstarter a lot, where you save up a bit of money to maybe pay an artist to do a cover and 3 pages. Then you do the campaign, and then if you get the money, people then have to wait like a year whilst the book gets
back end
done
deals.
and gets sent to them. I was able to kind of have enough money to get Clark to kind of do most of the work in advance. So then we did like the first Kickstarter, and within a couple of months, it was in people's hands, and I was able to kind of have like, it was just my own stuff, but it was a bit more like a proper little small press publisher as opposed to like a crowd-funded thing.
I guess that's like
so
domino
Spain
starts rolling, it all comes together, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Spain's just I like it a lot. I mean, England isn't great at the moment.
No, it's not really.
I'm a lot happier over here.
Yeah, it's not a political podcast, but I understand. We're planning to move to Germany as well, so it's like Europe for me seems to be a better place to thrive at the moment, especially for this as well. Because I mean, if like you live in a place for so long, I think you can get limited to what you're inspired by moving somewhere else. And I think it freshens it up, different perspectives. So. Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. The UK is not great. So has comics turned into a full-time gig now? I mean,
So for like 2 years, about 2 years now, I've been doing it full time, which again is something that Spain allows that England wouldn't allow. Like, just the basics of like rent and stuff would mean, unless I wanted to live at my mum's, then it wouldn't have. I wouldn't have been able to go full time quite so fast. But,
that's good.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been decent. I guess from the point where I signed the contract to do Mugshots, I guess, because I got the Mugshots contract on top of knowing that Weird Work was coming out from Image, and then I signed the Skin Police contract as well. So it's like, okay, I've got work now for a while.
Excellent. So how did those deals with MadCave and Oni Press come about? Because I mean, Image is the usual go-to. I mean, that's where I went to straight away. And everyone that I know that wants to work in comics, they beeline for Image. As it's the heritage behind Image. That's the place you want to go. And there's great places like Dark Horse out there and Oni Press and everywhere else. So how did MadCave and Oni come about? What was the decision-making process with them?
So after Frank came out and got picked up by Scout and came out, it got released, and then the day it got announced, I got an email from someone at Aftershock being like, "Oh, we really like this." I think they'd misunderstood that someone was already publishing it and wanted to publish it, and then realized that, oh no, this is coming out from someone else, and then asked me, "Do you have any other pitches? Like, we'd really like to see them." So I kind of thought like, this is really easy. I did my first book on Kickstarter. It got picked up by a publisher. Now another publisher's asking me for stuff.
You got lucky, my friend.
Well, but then I think I must have sent Aftershock between like little quick pitches and full like page document pitches, like, I don't know, 15 different pitches that all got rejected over the course of like a year or year and a half. So yeah, things kind of grounded to a bit of a halt, and I kept doing the Kickstarter stuff in the meantime. But from Frank kind of starting to come out in 2020, it was then quite a big gap till Weird Work, which was the next book that I did on the next kind of ongoing like series I did on Kickstarter, before that got picked up by Image. And then that kind of came out, I think the first issue was July 2022. So there was kind of a gap where it's like, I thought, oh, this is all going really well. And then the brakes kind of got put on everything. But having a book with Image is obviously a nice calling card, and that made getting in touch with other publishers
Yeah,
a little
it does
easier.
open some doors, doesn't it? Yeah, so that's interesting because it is a freelance space. What we do, what other people do in this industry. So you get those moments where it's all like, wow, this couldn't be any better, but that could be taken away in a heartbeat, you know. So yeah, I bet that was a bit worrying. So
Well, I guess at that point I still wasn't fully. I thought, oh, this is really cool, but I was still kind of doing my other work, and it wasn't such a
they hadn't taken over yet as
kind of,
the
yeah, like so it was okay. It was frustrating, I guess, more than anything. But the thing that happened with ending up with Mugshots at MadCave was that because Chris Matthews, who does the artwork for Mugshots, his day job was in animation, and he was working on like the Sesame Street animated kids series at the time. And it was taking him like so long to do the art because we did a one shot that we did on Kickstarter of Mugshots first, and then we were doing the one that you've been reading as a sequel to that. But in the time, Chris was taking so long to get it done that from when we kind of started doing that in like 2021, I had like weird work come out from Image, and I was speaking to Man from Maybe was going to be coming out from Oni, and I was like, oh, Chris, if I can get us some money, could you do this like as a job for a little bit? And he was like, yes, if you can do that. And then yeah, that's where we managed to get MadCave to pick us up, and that let Chris go full time as well.
oh wait, so MadCave helped with financing of the art.
Yeah, they paid us. We got page rates up front, but because we did also Image were very interested in Mugshots as well, and like Image, I love Image. So many amazing books and an amazing publisher that do so many good things, but they aren't generally someone that pay you in advance. It's very
No.
much like you bring them the book, they're not going to meddle with anything. You get to do your whole vision of what you want to create. They'll put it out, and if it does really well, then the creators benefit from it. But if it doesn't do well, then you've done a lot of work, and
Yeah.
there's not going to be a whole lot of money there.
Yeah.
So we had that difficult choice of Image or MadCave, and yeah, at the time that MadCave was the right choice for us to allow me and Chris to both go full time doing the
Yeah.
job.
I think that's definitely a much better route. I mean, like your summation of Image was exactly mine. It was literally like pitched, and they're like, right, we want it. Next thing I know, it's solicited. I didn't actually know it was going to be solicited. We hadn't even finished the first issue, and then it was just a
Oh,
year
okay.
of 24/7 working for,
Yeah,
it's really
that's
difficult.
intense.
It was super intense. A lot of life things changed as well, so we didn't continue it. But I'm going to do some more next year. But like they don't really promote either as well. Image. So MadCave seemed to do a lot of promotion of the books that they have. So with the onus with Image was like we'll put it out there, and then you've got to go do the rest. You've got to go to the conventions. You've got to talk to the media. You've got to do this. But it seems that MadCave seemed to really help with that process as well. I mean, I know there's some good people there. Mike Martz, I've dealt with. He's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are they quite involved in helping push the book out there, or is it on your shoulders to tap up the media outlets and appear at conventions and things?
Well, I guess it's like it comes back to kind of what we were saying in terms of like MadCave invest money in the book in advance. So it is kind of like they need to make the money back to like
Sure.
keep functioning as a publisher, whereas Image is much more like they're just there as a kind of conduit for creators to
Yeah, I'd
get
say
work
so.
out there without like they've got Saga making them enough money that they don't need to, like, it doesn't matter that much. Like obviously they release stuff that they care about and that they're passionate about, but it really is kind of they'll do a little bit. And to be honest, just having the eye on your book, you sell more. Like the most I've sold of anything is Weird Work issue 1, and that's because people buy Image number
Yeah.
ones.
There's that
Like
pre-built
you
trust, isn't there? I guess,
yeah.
and all the heritage and history. So about
So yeah,
mugshots.
totally.
Sorry, I interrupted you there. I'm so excited about mugshots. I've been waiting to get to talk. So this book, like, it really, really resonated with me. So I come from an Italian background. So as you can imagine, growing up, you had all the parallels drawn with the mafia. So I've always been fascinated with the underworld and crime mafia. So I was wondering, since this book feels so very deliberately written, very carefully written, are there any real world experiences that like influence the book? Now, I'm not saying are you from the criminal underworld, but I'm just interested to know where that inspiration came from, because it really. I don't understand. It feels so informed, the writing about the underworld and the way the people talk and how everything happens. So, is there some cool story behind the book?
Yeah. So although the complete story is completely fictional. Growing up, my dad was very much involved in that kind of world. When I was born and I was a kid, he was a property developer, but we kind of lost everything in the recession in like 1990, and he turned to illegal means to kind of try and keep like the family afloat. So yeah, pretty much from being about 4 or 5 years old till he ended up going to prison when I was about 12 or 13. Like I saw a lot of, but not as a like Mugshots is a more, there was no shootout. That well, there was one or two things, but there was nothing quite as dramatic as some of the biggest kind of moments in Mugshots. But yeah, like I saw an awful lot of crazy stuff as a kid, and I met a lot of these types of people. So I guess yeah, if the dialogue and the way people interact feels kind of authentic, then that's probably what I really gained
Yeah.
from the kind of upbringing that I had. Well, my mum's lovely though, so she was very
You're throwing
good,
out all the disclaimers here.
yeah.
I notice.
So, yeah, I don't want her hearing this. She doesn't like it when I talk about this stuff anyway.
Yep.
But yeah, no, because they separated when I was around 6 years old. So dad was like every few weekends we'd stay with him, and the rest of the time with mum. But yeah, those weekends, I think she didn't realize quite what we were being exposed to on our weekends away with dad.
No, well, she might learn a bit more if she reads the book, but like it really did, like I say, because having been in the Italian side of things, and when I watched The Sopranos and things like that, a lot of the thing resonate with me because that's what I heard growing up. So I just felt there was something there, and I think that's why it is so good. And I'm brutal with comic books. The older I get, the less time I have for things, but this one just really shone. So, I mean, and also another thing, because I've spent a lot of time in Brighton as well, and I really felt like I was in Brighton. I could almost, smell the seaside and see the damn seagulls. Like, so did Chris Matthews have a lot of reference material? I guess he was English too, right? So did he live in?
Yeah,
Brighton?
we're both from Worthing. I grew up in Worthing, and Chris was around Littlehampton. So Brighton's like the nearest kind of cool place to go. So yeah, from our kind of like mid-teenage years, yeah, we would have. I mean, I've been to Brighton hundreds of times, and Chris probably similar.
Yeah, because his work really elevates your writing. I mean, you've been lucky to work with quite a few good artists. I've noticed Chris Matthews, Daniel Gete, Shaky Kane. So the artistic approach to the book, was that like a conscious decision, or was that his normal style? Because that decision, I've noticed, it's like that perfect storm: great writing, great art, and the authenticity, and the art approach that you've taken on it just adds more of that sort of crime noir nostalgia feel to the underworld. So was that like a conscious decision to make the art very stylistic?
So that's kind of all on Chris's side, in that like I never pushed him any particular way. So because we did there's, I don't know if you didn't get it on the Kickstarter, then you wouldn't have seen it, but there's a 25-page mugshot.
I did not see it. I'm going to try and track that down.
Comic that, well, I can send you I'll send you the PDF after
perks
after we're done.
Perks of the interviewing, right?
Yeah. So we did that on Kickstarter, which is its own standalone story. And so Chris kind of just came up with the art style he wanted to use for that book, which is a little bit. I mean, Chris. The thing with Chris is like that was his first comic, and this is his second comic that you're getting now, which is kind of insane how good he is off the back of such a small amount of comics work. But he's always been one of those guys that's just super good at everything. Like he was better than our teachers at school in the
I hate those guys.
When we were like 12, 13, and he had like the javelin record in the county, and he was a drummer. But he I think because it's interesting because Chris isn't a big comics guy. Like a lot of what he knows from comics is like what he used to pick up off my bedroom floor when we were playing like Grand Theft Auto 3 when we were teenagers. So he'd look through, like I was buying like the Hush, Jim Lee, Jeff Loeb storyline. So he'd see that and different things. But because obviously it's got such a link with the Darwin Cook Parker books, but Chris didn't know any of that stuff. So that's kind of an odd coincidence. And I don't know if that comes from the fact that Darwin was also came from an animation background. So maybe it's like Chris really wanted to simplify, and because he was new to comics, rather than getting too focused in on coloring, he wanted to really focus on the storytelling and the art. So keeping it the one color allowed him to focus a lot more on that side of it. So yeah, I think that's kind of like that's Chris's drawing style when he draws what he wants to draw. But yeah, definitely like the one color thing was
Yeah.
partially to mean that he could really focus on delivering on the artwork itself.
Well,
So,
it really, really works. Even if it's like a happy accident, it really, really works. I think, I mean, I'm sure your writing would shine through any art, but I think that style and the way he's done it really, really does capture everything you want. It's fantastic. So, another Brighton question. I guess you must have hung out at good old Dave's comic book store then. Were you a regular haunt there?
yeah, so I mean, Dave's Books was where I used to go to, where I first started getting the trading cards from. From actually, like Dave was there then. That was when he was still
Wow, you were there when
around.
Dave was there. That's going back
Yeah,
some
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Dave and his wife would be behind the till at the back of the shop. They've remodeled it all now, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I first started getting my getting the trading cards from.
And mate, I was in there the other week actually. I dropped loads of hints that they should really push mugshots. Because
Okay,
I
oh
don't
no,
miss
yeah, no,
out.
I think they've been decent. I went in there when I was back home a few months ago and had a nice chat with the guys who are in charge there.
Yeah, because Steve, the manager's recently passed away. He was
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So that was a great loss to comics. He really helped push indie comics in Brighton as well.
Mhm.
Lovely guy, but that's another day. So with mugshots, I thought, what is this guy going to do next? Right? What is he going to do next? And this little cover of Skin Police, showed up on my little what's coming out next week. Because it was a little icon, I didn't realize it's your book. So I went through and thought, no, that's probably not for me, probably not for me. And I was working out my show for the next day and I was missing a book. And I thought, let's go back. And I thought, oh my God, this is another Jordan Thomas book. I have to read it. And I'm so glad I did. Because again, it was just another one of those books that just ticks all the boxes for me. So where did that come from? It's like a love letter to Blade Runner, right? I mean, what was the inspiration behind that? It's jumping from crime. And I suppose the Shaky Kane stuff was a bit more science fiction, but this is a
Mhm.
huge leap from Mugshots. So tell me about Skin Police.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely like Blade Runner was part of the jumping off point. I think it was kind of watching Blade Runner, and Blade Runner's a very focused story where it's like, okay, there's these five replicants that are out there and he's got to track them down. And then you get the story over the course of that. And I've kind of thought about in the same way that maybe like The Walking Dead takes zombies and goes global
Yeah.
with it, as opposed to having the Night of the Living Dead, people trapped in one house, or Dawn of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, people in one shopping mall. Oh, I've gone very American there. Ugh. But it was kind of thinking like, okay, what would this taken to the extreme kind of look like was the starting point. And from there, lots of different things came out of it to the point where I think the Blade Runner comparisons are probably more in the one line log line than actually once you get into the book, there's quite a lot of different stuff
Yeah.
going on. And I mean, I've read the original Philip K. Dick book as well, and that's got a different kind. I think you mentioned on your show about the kind of there's a certain kind of monotony to the job that they're doing. Like he doesn't. It's not a huge deal to the guy
Yeah, he's just like
doing it.
like making a sandwich. It's like this is what I do.
Yeah.
This is how I do it. But it's quite. I feel like again, this is how my brain was working. I was like, I think he doesn't really understand that the impact of what he's doing, what it means to the people that he's tracking down, what it means to the world. It's just like he's that old guy that's got a job to do and he's going to get it done. And I found that really interesting as well because I don't feel he's not really invested in why he's doing it. It's just his job and he's got to do it. But I guess there's only one issue and I'll find out more. But I'm not sure if that was me about the monotony part though, because I found nothing about this book or the character monotonous. I just found him fascinating as well. It's
I
like,
think you just said something along the lines of that, like you say, it's a job. Like it's not. Oh, like he kind of gets on with it, and
yeah,
I think as you mentioned how on the cover his expression is quite kind of like, yeah, this is just a day in my life kind of thing. So I think that comes a little bit as well from the original Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Kind of, it's a little bit more of an odd little job that the man does as opposed to
yeah,
being the cool Harrison Ford character in the film. And from there, like especially I think when I decided to set it in a future Europe as opposed to like a future America, that also changed some stuff in that like it's kind of a fascist dictatorship. but like the fascist dictatorships that like they had in Spain are quite different to maybe like the kind of what you think of in like a 2000 AD or something. Like if you speak to like 60, 70-year-old Spanish people here, a lot of them will say like, oh, we actually thought it was better under Franco. Like there's a bit of that attitude here. Like it wasn't a full on like oppression. It was like you had a lot of your choices taken away, but stuff was okay. And so it's kind of, I wanted to try and bring a bit of a different future, like still doing the kind of dystopian like dictatorship, but it's not like a full on like everyone's under the boot. It's kind of like if you get on with your life as normal, you can function in this world if you're lucky enough to not be one of the dupes.
Yeah, that's what I like. It's not so much Big Brother. It's just sort of like, Big Uncle, if you know what I mean. It's just like, we are watching, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I cannot wait to find out where this book goes. So what was I going to ask next? So these are both mini-series, right? Mugshots and Skin Police. So if they are popular, I mean, they are popular in my mind, but if when they're finished, is there plans to do more? Because I feel there's so many more stories you could tell in these worlds that you've created.
Yeah, so the whole concept of Mugshots originally was I basically wanted to do a UK version of Brubaker and Phillips Criminal, like just have a kind of crime universe within the UK where, a bit like in Sin City as well, where a character could be the main character in one story and then they might pop up as a secondary character in another story. So when you read the original one shot we did, there's a few character crossovers, even though it doesn't impact the story necessarily. But I wanted to kind of build out a world. I mean, I could write those kind of Mugshots type stories forever. Like they're kind of my comfort place as a writer.
There. You could, because all their characters, interweave, don't they?
Oh, yeah, good. Exactly. So I'd love to keep doing that. I mean, it's not the best time in comics for selling comics at the moment. So yeah, it can be a little bit hard to kind of keep getting because we're kind of in a bit of a moment of where everything's about the number one issue.
Yeah.
Like you get decent sales on a number one and then they very quickly drop off and people don't really like back in the day. I mean, even with like Walking Dead, but with Sandman and lots of classic series, they didn't necessarily start as big successes, but the publishers kind of stuck with them and that enabled them to kind of come back up again and grow. And we don't really get to do that now. Like nowhere is commissioning, unless you're maybe Scott Snyder or something, ongoing series. It's all mini series and like without going too much into kind of behind the scenes stuff with somewhere like MadCave, like they really love the work that we've done on the book and they'd love us to do something else there. And they'd love it to be kind of similar because they think that worked really well, but they maybe would be nervous for it to be branded Mugshots again, just because they've already had this is a new thing. You can buy the number one issue.
Yeah.
Like that's a bit of a tough thing at the moment. And Skin Police, like a lot of my ideas tend to be, I guess, kind of filmic in structure, in that like Frank is a very filmic structure. Man from Maybe is like that as well. Whereas Skin Police is one of the first ideas that I really fell in love with that would have been something that I would have loved to have done as like a Vertigo 45 issue ongoing, where you get to see the Skin Police in different parts of this future Europe. And yeah, that, like you said, there's so many, it's such a big world, Skin Police.
Fast.
Love to be able to do like 50 issues set in that world. But again, it's kind of going to come down to how well it does, how popular it is. Does it get picked up for any awards maybe? Do we get a film option or something? Like all these little things can kind of increase your chances of doing more. But yeah, definitely like we're probably at the worst time in comics ever for ongoing series. So
you're right. It's all about the number ones. It's like they just want the hype of this new release. And once they've acquired the hype of a new release and the 72 variant number one covers that come with it, they need the next hype thing. I think that's why books like yours, I think, just really shine, because they are of a high quality. It's not just another number one regurgitated to get the sale numbers. Your books are written with care and love, and the characters are evolving. So I hope that both of these books, I wish you all success with these books, because I would love to read more. But so we talked about science fiction crime. Are those your two sort of go-to genres that you like? Because I always lean when I'm writing to one or two specific genres, one more than the other. So is this your sort of niche, or are we going to expect some other stories in different areas? What about superheroes? You ever thought about getting into that? Is that your cup of tea?
Yeah, no, they definitely, like, as a kid that grew up loving all of the Marvel and DC stuff, I would very much like a go at some of those. As an English guy, like, my favorite character is John Constantine. So getting to do some kind of Hellblazer thing at some point, I've got my Hellblazer pitch kind of ready for if that
Yeah.
opportunity comes up. But again, it comes back a bit to what we're kind of talking about with the market forces of comics. It's way easier to get a project greenlit that is like sci-fi or something, as opposed to a lot of, like, I really love like historical fiction type stories. Like, I've got a couple of pitches which I really love, which are kind of set historically. But I mean, if I've heard one editor tell me that they can't sell historically set stuff, then I've heard every editor at every publisher tell me that.
No.
I mean, I got an email back from one editor for a pitch that was set just before World War II. And the email back said, we love this. We fell in love with this. The characters, the drama, this was incredible. Because it was like a 2-page full breakdown of the whole story. And then but then it was like, oh, but it's quite hard to sell that type of the story set in that time period at the moment. Would there be any possibility to move it to a different time period? And it's like, it's about, like, it's very much important that it's set in that time period, like, it needs to open on, like, 1932 Germany. So you get that hit of, like, well, what's coming.
Yeah.
And it's like, despite, so a lot of what's being made isn't necessarily what companies think is the best stuff, but it's what they think they can sell. And at the end of the day, like, you can get annoyed about that, but comics aren't selling a ton.
They're not.
And these companies don't have, like, loads of money in the bank, so they need to be kind of hitting their margins. And so, yeah, I can understand why they are wary about things, whereas it's probably, like, I don't know if you like that kind of stuff, but I love, like, that, like, I haven't got it yet. I haven't read it yet, but, like, there's the Western book, The Blood Brothers Mother. That's
that's really good.
Riso.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll buy that when that comes out in the collection, and that's, like, so the kind of book that I'd love, but I don't imagine that it's selling tons because it's a Western.
You know what? I think you're right, actually. Yeah, because I tend to like those type of books that most other people.
So it's like me, the guys that do the iFanboy podcast, and maybe, like, 5 other people. That's where the problem is for selling these kind of things.
It is. And I think a lot of great stories are never see the light of day because of it, because it'd be drowned in superheroes. And the older I get, I tend to read. I love superhero stuff. I mean, like you say, but, like, if I buy 10 books, for example, 8 of them are going to be non-superhero now, and it's stories like these that are different, like yours and these timepiece and like a Western. I don't like Western comics, but I read that and I was like, where's issue 2? So it is a shame, but it is the state of the industry, and I guess if we want that industry to survive, they got to sell those number ones in those books. You answered.
I guess it's a case of. Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say. I think it's a case of. I think it's at a point, really, and I don't want to upset any of the publishers that I work for, but I feel like it's kind of, you might need to take some risks to try and come out the other side. Because, like you say, with the 1 million number one variants, I know from speaking to people that is especially at the big 2, that's a very concerted. We're surviving off the back of the fact that we can sell a load of variant covers for an issue 1 of a book, even if the sales then plummet kind of afterwards. And I think that keeping doing that as a way, as a business model, is not going to last forever. And I already hear that it's starting to not work so well. And I think really places need to take a bit of a chance and be like, okay, this might drop down to selling 1,500 copies a week, an issue. But we want to stick with this book for 12 issues and get a couple of trades out of it and hope that, like, people start to see that it's really good and that it can build from there. Because I think just constantly releasing 4-issue series, being like, oh, well, by the end, it was only selling 2,000 copies. Let's not do any more of that. Then you're not going to get any more of those sagas, or
No,
like
you won't.
it's only Image that can do these things, and it's only big name creators at Image, really, like a James Tynion, who can release these kind of ongoing books and either get the sales or be in a position where they can swallow some losses for a bit whilst they build up to have those several trades. Because it's like you go to Forbidden Planet in London and you see all the trades and everything on the shelves. But imagine like trying to pick out one volume of something in that shelf. You need, I think, it's something I talk about with Chris about our work, is that it'd be really great to get something that gets trade 1, 2, and 3, and it starts to be a chunk on the shelf.
On the
So when
shelf,
people
yeah.
they say, "Oh, there's a lot of that," like that might be interesting, kind of thing. But I get that, like, it's easy to say, but it is a risk, and these companies are often operating on a kind of knife's edge.
It's true, but like you say, it is short-sighted, right? You know, because I think the public fans are getting tired of it. I mean, personally, like, I'm very OCD and autistic. I'm on the spectrum, so when I collect something, I have to have all of it. It's like if there's 72 covers or something, I have to have them. And because they're doing this with monthly books now, I just don't collect monthlies anymore. I'll wait for the trade, and I think waiting for the trade doesn't help the company and the creators, because they need their book to sell before the trade to get the trade and everything else. So it is a very strange time in comic books, and I think we're at breaking point here where something needs to change, and that's why I want books like yours to be, you know, that extra weight that breaks it, and people invest more money. Like you say with Vertigo, we would never had some of like Why the Last Man, you know, 100 Bullets, all those great books. We would never have those today. I just don't see it happening. I think Saga and everything else is off the back of the fact that it's a well-established creator where he has the loyalty to the creator, irrespective of what book he's writing. You know, it's like you now. If you write something, I'm going to read it. You know, I may not have done that before if I hadn't got into those little books that you put out that are miniseries. So I think the industry definitely has changed. But we could talk for hours about that. We're here to talk about you. But you've answered a couple of my questions, actually, because I was going to say, who would be if you could pick anything to create, it'd be Hellblazer, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, if it was going to be, if it would be an IP character, yeah, Hellblazer.
Is that because you like? Because my favorite genre is like the horror and the supernatural, and is that like another facet you want to pursue?
I mean, I do like horror stuff, and like Frank, obviously, my first book was a horror. I've written some other horror scripts. One of my period set ones is a horror that I haven't been able to get done yet. But yeah, I don't know. I just love Hellblazer. I've got all 300 issues of the original Vertigo run in a big old long box at my poor mother's house, and I love that character. The Vertigo version. I don't really want to be doing the one that's in the main DC.
Well,
universe,
Vertigo is back, so now's the time to pitch it, right?
Yeah. So we'll have to see. But no, I did. Yeah, I think I love that character because he like aged in real time, and he carried the events of his past with him. And I can't think that you can find another character when you look at that Vertigo run who just had amazing writer after amazing writer. Like, considering it's 300 issues, there's probably only like a handful of issues that I'm kind of lukewarm on. Like, it was such a consistently good run and such a kind of great character to write, I think. I mean, to be honest, Mugshots is kind of Hellblazer if John had gone into crime instead of going into being
he has
magical.
got that, how do I say it, that fuck you attitude, basically, right? It's like, yeah, and I love that. That's one of the things I love about the character. It's really interesting. That's Hellblazer. So you mentioned creators on that run, and you also mentioned a lot of creators that I love. I think we're quite similar. So, you know, the Brewbakers, the Bendis, and those guys. So, I mean, which creators inspire you the most? You know, and what books are you reading at the moment? You know, I'd like to know that.
So yeah, definitely Brubaker and Philip stuff. Ed Brubaker in general, he's kind of one of those writers where like there's stuff of his that I love. Like, I love Criminal. I thought Pulp was incredible. I love his Captain America run, but also like everything he does is always at least good. Like, I don't know if I've ever read a Brubaker comic and been like, oh, that was not well done. Like, he's got a base level of quality that's always there. Bendis was a big one. Like, I kind of got into reading comics regularly with all the Ultimate stuff. So it was like Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men. So yeah, Bendis is definitely one. I mean, like, I am still always in awe of Alan Moore. I'm reading.
Well, this whole podcast is dedicated to it seems
Yes.
around Watchmen. He's the reason I found out that comics weren't just people in tights, and that Alan Moore for me was the catalyst for everything to do with comics for me. So I'm glad you said Alan Moore.
Oh, I mean, he's like, he writes in like someone like Brubaker. I think they're amazing and I love it, but I don't look at their work and think, oh, I can't do that. I do read something like From Hell and think, yeah, like I think I'm a pretty good writer, but I don't think I'm ever going to be from hell good at writing, you know?
I mean, you've seen some of the scripts, like, you know, one panel is 17 pages of explanation of the light in the background, why that light's in the sky at that specific point in time. It's insane. And I mean, because when I started writing, I was like, well, I want to write like Alan Moore. And I had those little pages from Watchmen script. And I was like, you can't do this. It isn't. And it got down to like literally like, you know, a sentence and dialogue, sentence dialogue. But it's insane, the level. It's like, I don't think anyone can write like quite like Alan Moore. But it's a shame.
So I've been reading his stuff recently. I've got I keep most of my comic stuff at my mum's back in England. Like I only got a small place here in Valencia. And I've got the DC and Marvel apps, and I've got the DC Ultra app that gives you like all the kind of everything basically. So yeah, I've been reading. I just read Top 10 for the first time, which was great. I actually had quite a few kind of connected a little bit with some Skin Police and Weird Work that I didn't know as I'd written them before reading it. But there's some kind of links there. I'm reading Tom Strong at the moment. So yeah, I enjoy those. They're pretty great, those apps, the amount of stuff that's on there, even if I prefer a physical book in my hand. I got the 2000. I've been reading the Judge Dredd case files.
Oh yeah, so they're great.
So I'm reading through the early ones of those at the moment, getting to see some glorious Brian Bolland and Nick McMahon artwork.
Bolland's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2000. That's why I was surprised, as you are English, that 2000 AD wasn't that kind of inspirational. That's where a lot of British creators start. You know, is 2000 AD. You know, ABC Warriors, Nemesis the Warlock, Strontium Dog, Dread, Rogue Trooper, and all these things. So it was really interesting to find that you kind of circumvented that and went straight to the, you know, the big meat on the table rather than the little English, you know, portion on the side. So there's a lot of great stuff 2000 AD, and I wish that was more in the mainstream as well, but it just isn't. A couple of questions, because I know I'm taking up a lot of your time, so I just get so excited. One of the things that I found weird with writing and having things published was fans, or I say fans, people who send you criticism. Have you had any weird... I mean, I had a death threat because they wrote me this, like, it must have been about 10 A4 worth of text, no punctuation, no paragraph breaks, email, telling me how much they loved the book. And then at the end, there was a death threat because our book was getting later from release date each time. And it was really weird to have this, like, gushing, like, appraisal of your work and then like a real, you know, report it to the police death threat. So what reception have you had with your books, and how do you deal with it when it's negative? And, you know, any funny stories from fans writing to you?
So I guess, yeah, with social media now, you tend to see a fair bit of stuff. I mean, mostly it's been fairly positive, I guess. I did have a nice woman who runs several comic shops in Philadelphia did a like TikTok type video, like publicizing Skin Police when it was coming out. And I don't know if the people realized that I was tagged into the video. So that was a real, I think maybe because she's female as well, and that kind of brings a lot of these guys in to want to say something. But yeah, there was an awful lot of comments on that. And most of it was fairly kind of positive. But yeah, there were a few that were just kind of people being like, oh, that's been done to death or anything and stuff like that, where people haven't actually read it, but have made like a decision off. But I think she showed one cover in the video and just gave like the little kind of blurb of what it's about. And you see people making decisions off the back of that. And you're like, oh God, like that can kind of stress you out a bit in terms of how easy it is for someone just to be like, oh no, I don't like that, even though they haven't read it. In terms of weird interactions, I had one guy come up to my table at a convention, and he stood and he read the whole double-sized first issue of The Man from Maybe in front of me. then said, "Oh, I enjoyed that," and put it back down and walked off. That was quite a strange, strange one.
That is bizarre. That is bizarre. Yeah, I just wondered. I mean, I guess with COVID and everything, there haven't been many conventions around the last few years. So, I guess are you appearing in any coming up conventions, any
Yeah,
signings?
I'm at Fort Bubble
Oh, that's always
in
a
a
good one.
few weeks, so yeah, that should be fun. That's the only one I've got in the schedule at the moment, but I've been to a fair few. I went to C2E2 in Chicago and did a panel there for MadCave, and I was at New York Comic Con last year and did a panel for Man from Maybe, which was really cool. I think I sometimes I do signings at Gosh in
Oh, good.
London.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think
Oh
that they
gosh,
want to get me and Chris in for a mugshot signing when the collection
I'll
is
definitely be up
is
there.
out.
I'll
So yeah,
definitely
so
be up
that'll be
there.
cool. But yeah, no, I always do Thought Bubble. I sometimes do MCM, normally like once a year. And then apart from that, it's really if I get invited to things, because otherwise it can be a little bit expensive,
Yeah,
like the whole traveling over from Spain, hotels and all
exactly.
this kind of stuff. So yeah, it depends. I did Portsmouth Comic Con this year, which was really fun. So yeah, no, if
That's where
anyone
I'm
wants to
based,
invite
actually.
me, I'm available. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I might have
Nice.
walked past you. You mentioned. I meant to ask earlier on actually about the man from Maybe Weird. But how did you get hooked up with legendary Shaky Kane? I mean, look, that's like to me. I was like, new guy, Shaky Kane. You know, no, not disparaging your work. It's amazing, but I'm
No,
like,
no, no.
how did that happen?
So that's a really random story. I was doing a comic just when lockdown happened through Kickstarter that was called Quarantine, where I wrote a script and I got every page was drawn by a different artist. And one of my best friends, who's a comic book artist, his boyfriend used to date Shaky's daughter back when he was, I guess, at least pretending to be a straight man. And so he knew Shaky a lot from before in the previous time of his life when he was like 16 and had a girlfriend. And and so he was like, "Oh yeah, I know this guy Shaky Kane. He did all this 2000 AD work and stuff at Image. Like, I'm sure he'd do a page for your comic." So he put me in touch with Shaky, and we did one page. But Shaky isn't the best at email, so he missed the email originally and took ages to. It wasn't until I like got in touch with him on Facebook that he said, "Oh yeah, no, I'd love to do that." But by that point, I'd already kind of given out most of the really fun pages later on in the story. So Shaky had to do a fairly like not the most interesting, not really taking advantage of his particular skill
Hmm.
set. So I kind of was still left with this feeling of like, oh, I'd like to do something more with Shaky. And originally that was going to just be maybe like a kind of 12-page thing for an anthology. But then as I kind of worked on the story, it became weird work and developed into like a 100-page thing. And as Shaky says, he's never turned down a job. So that was when I asked him if he wanted to do that, he said yes. And yeah, we did that through Kickstarter before putting it
Wow.
on Image. And then actually it's one of our backers on the Kickstarter. It was Hunter Goranson, who at the time was working at Boom, but then became the publisher at Oni. And when he took over the job, he got in touch with me because he wanted to publish weird work there. And when I told him Image already had it, he was like, "Do you have anything else?" I was like, "Sure, give us a day. I'll
Yeah,
come back to
cool.
you."
You've always got
And that's
something,
when,
right?
yeah,
Even if you haven't, right?
yeah. So that's when Shaky gave me his idea about a bunch of thing crashing in amongst some dinosaurs and then a NASA space buggy appearing with a couple of astronauts who take off their helmet and are also dinosaurs. And he was like, "What do you think?" I was like,
Very
"Okay,
Shaky
I guess
K.
that's the beginning. I don't know what happens next, but I'll figure it out." But
It's
yeah,
like the Marvel way, right? Because I got introduced to him in late 80s, early 90s in Deadline. And I was like, wow,
yeah.
what is this? You know, I've never seen anything like it before. And I was just hooked lifelong. So that's an amazing story. I love how these little things happen. So, last question, because like I say, I've taken too much of your time already. Is there anything you could tell us about that's coming out that we don't know about? Any exclusive to our like 50 odd watches at this point?
So we announced that me and Chris are going to be doing a new book with Comixology, with the like Amazon comic
That's
book
right.
publisher. So we're not allowed to say what that is yet, but that will be cool to have me and Chris working together again. Because Chris is kind of like my in the Brubaker and Phillips kind of partnership, in that I've always making sure that Chris has something to be working on. So he's already drawn the first issue of that, but so hopefully we'll start to leak a bit more of that soon for people to have a look at.
Amazing.
And then me and Chris are also, we've had a pitch picked up by a very exciting publisher. I'm just waiting to have the phone call with them to kind of get all the details signed off. But yeah, so that next year there, hopefully me and Chris will have 2 new kind of 120, 130 page issue things coming out, which should be really cool. And yeah, apart from that, it's just Skin Police is still going. Mugshots the final issue of Mugshots comes out in like 6 weeks, so you get to see how that all wraps up.
Good. Are you going to do a nice hardcover with the Kickstarter book in there as well? Maybe a nice little Lux hardcover or something?
That depends on what MadCave want to do, really, as they kind of currently haven't wanted to publish the one shot. But we'll see. There'll definitely be like a collected version of it. But yeah, we'll see. It's one of those things where, and the way these things work anyway, like it'd be cool to do more Mugshots with MadCave, but if they don't want to, then me and Chris can do more Mugshots elsewhere when the kind of time comes. So definitely there will be more Mugshots in the future. I don't know exactly where that will happen at the moment, but yeah, definitely there'll be more.
Well, we will follow all of it and cover it all on the show, because there's been absolute pleasure to read your books, an absolute pleasure to have this chat with you, man. So, anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I don't think so. Apart from just hopefully people will pick up the books if they like them, and the only way that we get to make more is if they sell. So yeah, when the Mugshots collection comes out, if people want to grab that, we're doing an exclusive book plate with OK Comics, the comic shop in Leeds. So anyone
very
who
good
buys
comic store, actually. I love the guy there. Yeah. He's really nice.
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
He did that for me. I think he actually did that for me for my debut. Actually, he did a little plate that was signed years and years ago. Yeah,
no, they're a great shop, and Jared's a really great guy there. So yeah, if anyone hasn't checked out Mugshots, then when it comes out in February in the collected edition, there'll be 50 limited edition unique book plates signed by me and Chris with the copies that you can buy from OK Comics. So I definitely would recommend.
I should be ordering that the second it pops on the website. Again, thank you so much for coming on. I wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll meet and talk again.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. It's been great chatting.
Brilliant, mate. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, we'll hopefully catch you in the next interview. Let us know what you think. But it's goodbye from us.